heard about the vaccine. But anybody who knows me knows that in order for me to, I don't just say I'm going to be on just because the governor called, but the fact is I'm a pastor first, and I want to make sure that what's coming is going to be beneficial to our community. I too, like you, have a lot of questions and had a lot of questions that I want to make sure that I had answered. And I understood that in this season and this time, skepticism is very big. And so in order to deal with a lot of the issues of skepticism and to be able to deal with some of the challenges that many people are facing, I began a little, fact-seeking mission. I've had the opportunity to share in a few forums on the vaccine, so much so that I was, convinced that more people need to hear and more people need to become more aware as this vaccine continues to become available. The sad part on the back end of it is it's estimated, and some have said by possibly the end of February, that we could possibly see 500,000 deaths here in the United States attributed to COVID-19. Well, that's a startling number. But to deal in the area of prevention, to make sure that our community is well informed, that was the assignment that I wanted to bring tonight. And so I want us to be informed. I want those who are watching to be informed. It wasn't just for the People's Church, but for anybody who wanted to find out some information with regards to the vaccine and finding out how this actually plays out, and also to be able to have your questions answered, because so many times we hear things and we have questions. But I'm grateful tonight to be able to share in this conversation with an individual who is very well respected in our community, one who works in our community, works with us, and can give us a little bit more information in depth, up close and personal surrounding the vaccine. Let me say from the outset, my job is not to get you to, not to facilitate a conversation, to get you to make a decision. It's to get you information. The decisions that we make are being made by yourselves. But we want to make sure that you have the ample information so that you can be able to find out all that is going on. And so we're pleased to be joined by a couple of very special guests. Well, the first one is Dr. Sharon Brangman. She is the chair of the Department of Geriatrics at SUNY Upstate. And she's the director for the Upstate Center for Excellence for Alzheimer's Disease. Very accomplished in the field. Many of us know her, and her work is very well respected. Also, Dr. Kathy Faber-Langendoen, who is also a member of our People's Church. She's the chair of Bioethics and the Humanities Department, and she's also an oncologist at SUNY Upstate. She will help us in facilitating the questions. Just a couple of ground rules. You can feel free to use the chat to put your information out for everybody. But if you do have a specific question that you want to ask, and maybe you don't want to be your voice heard or seen on camera, you can always put it in the chat bar. Kathy will actually be taking those questions and be bringing those forward later on. If you want to ask directly or you want to ask a follow-up directly, Dr. Brangman will be able to assist and be able to take that as well. So that's the ground rules for today. Just have an open ear, an open heart, and that way we can all get the necessary information. So thank you all for sharing with us tonight. Without any further ado, we'll begin our conversation with Dr. Brangman. And first of all, Dr. Brangman, thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'd like to thank my friend and colleague, Dr. Kathy Faber-Langendoen. We've been friends for years and colleagues for years, and also to you, Pastor Jaime, for opening up your community for me to speak to everyone. I, just like Pastor Jaime just said, I'm not here to try to convince you to get a vaccine. What I want to do is try to give you information so that you can make a decision based on information and not on fear. And there's a lot of fear out there right now. There's a lot of bad information. And what I would like to do is bring you information that is accurate, up to date, and give you a chance to ask questions. So what I would like to just start out is just talking a little bit about the virus. And everybody has heard about the virus by now. You know, it's called COVID. It is a horrible, horrible virus. It is in every corner of the world. That's why it's called a pandemic, because it's in every country across the globe. And unfortunately, we're probably all going to be exposed to it at one point or another. Just like we've all been exposed to chicken pox and most of us have had the flu, this is one of those viruses that we're going to end up getting at some point. And if you've been able to avoid it for now, that's good. But people are getting coronavirus now and they don't even know where they're getting it from. I just spoke to a friend today who tested positive and she has no idea where she got it from. It is just very, very contagious. And you might have heard about a new variation of the virus that started in England called the UK variant that is super contagious. It may be so easy to transmit that you may not even have to be 6 feet away from someone to get it. So this is all very scary because this virus, as you've heard, can be very deadly. It has been especially deadly in the Black community. And so that's why I really felt it was important to talk about this. Now, that's not because we as Black people have some genetic or biological reason that this virus gets us more. It's because in general, we tend to have a lifestyle that makes us have more exposure to it. So many African-American people don't have the kind of job where they can work from home. They often have to take a bus to work or public transportation, or you may not live in a household where you can control who comes and goes. You might have a lot of people in the house, and those people all may have jobs outside of the house. So we tend to get exposed to the virus more. And so that's why it is more prevalent in African Americans, Latino communities, Native American communities, not because we have any kind of biological defect. And because this virus is especially bad for people who have certain illnesses, that's another reason why we're more vulnerable. Because as you know, problems like hypertension, diabetes, asthma, any kind of lung disease, being overweight, these are all risk factors that make you have a worse outcome if you do get exposed to this virus. And these are problems that tend to be very common in African American communities for a whole lot of different reasons. So it's kind of like an overlap of a perfect scenario where you are in a everyday pattern where you're more likely to get the virus.
I don't just say.
And then when you get the virus, you're more likely to get very sick from it. And as you heard Pastor Jaime say, we may have up to 500,000 people who are going to die by the end of February, and a good percentage of those people are African American. Right now, we're very close to 400,000 people dying, and people are dying at the rate of about 100,000 a week. And it has just become such a huge number, nobody seems shocked by it anymore. But a year ago, we would have never even heard this number and then just casually kept going through our day. So much has happened in one year. It's almost 1 year. So the infection rate is very high. There's a new variation that is especially contagious. It doesn't seem to be more deadly, but it's very contagious. And we as a community are more likely to get the virus. And when we get it, we're more likely to get very sick from it. And dying is just one aspect. You can survive the virus and have a lot of problems that could last after the virus is gone. So there are a group of people that are called long haulers who have had the virus, but are still having a lot of symptoms of the virus. They may get fevers, they may get short of breath, they may not get their sense of smell or taste back. You might have heard that some people, when they're getting the virus, the earliest signs is that they lose their sense of smell or taste. I just read an article that said the chest x-rays of people who have survived COVID look worse than any smoker we've ever seen. And the concern is that over the coming years, those lungs are not going to heal well. So you could end up with really chronic lung disease. The other thing is if you're pregnant, you seem to be especially vulnerable to this virus. And so if you know anyone who's pregnant, that's an extra concern. So there's just a lot of risk associated with this virus, and death is not the only risk. The risk is how it can affect your health over the long term. So right now, there is no cure for it. There is no treatment. In the past year or almost a year since the virus has been around, there have been a number of treatments that have kind of been put together to help. And sometimes they help some people and sometimes they don't. So right now, there is no cure for it. And the thing about a virus is that it's a different kind of organism, and it makes it very hard to make it disappear and make it go away. So this is a virus that's probably going to be with us, just like chickenpox is around and the flu and measles. It's probably going to be around. So the way to protect ourselves, other than wearing masks and staying 6 feet away from each other, is to have your body build up protection or immunity so that if you get exposed to this virus, your body can fight it. And so that is what a vaccine does. What a vaccine does is to expose your body to a small amount of the virus or whatever we're worried about. So it's not enough to make you sick, but it's enough for your body to start to mount a fight against it. So if your body ever sees it again, it'll be ready to go. And the way that this vaccine works is different from any other vaccine. Now, I was very, very skeptical because, not to get too political, but the truth is that I didn't trust anything coming out of the White House and the leadership in the White House. And I saw the way they ignored people who knew what they were doing and they knew science to make a political message out of something that was killing people. So when I heard about this vaccine, I was very, very skeptical. And then you might have heard that it's called Operation Warp Speed. And in general, when we're talking about health, I don't want to hear anything that's warp speed, because normally things take a while and they're very measured and we check it and we double check it and we triple check it. We usually don't do things very fast. So when I heard it was warp speed and it was coming out of this White House, I was saying there's no way I'm taking this vaccine. But as the vaccine came out and I heard more information about it and I read and talked to colleagues who are experts in the field, I became more comfortable with the concept of this vaccine. And it was not rushed, but it was made quickly. And there's a difference between rushing something and doing something quickly. And the reason why it was done so quickly, because it's using a technique that's really been around for more than 30 years. So this is not a brand new type of vaccine. It's just a different way of doing it. And in fact, this technique is now being used to treat certain cancers, to use our natural body defenses to take care of certain tumors that are growing. So this is a method that has been used for over 30 years. And when the virus first came out, they were able to take a little piece of the spike of the virus and use it to make this vaccine. Now, you've all seen pictures of this virus. It's kind of a round circle with these little spikes coming out. They kind of look like Bantu braids. They're just kind of sticking out all over the place. And what they did was they took a little piece of that spike. It's not enough to make you sick because it's not the whole virus. They took a little piece of that spike and they figured out what it was made out of. And then they wrapped it in a little bubble of fat so that it could enter your body and stick to your cells. And when your body sees that protein from the spike, it recognizes it as something that shouldn't be in your body, and it mounts a protection. It creates cells that have an excellent memory so that if it ever sees that virus again, it can start to attack it. There was a lot of money. Our tax dollars actually went to make this virus quickly. Not rushed, but quickly. And that money also cut a lot of the red tape that normally makes viruses take years to come out because there's so much bureaucracy and paperwork. But with the money that was put in from our tax dollars, they were able to shortcut some of that paperwork so that the vaccine could be available quicker. So this is not a vaccine that was just made overnight. Forget that warp speed. Forget that it came out of the White House, and realize that it came from science that's been around for 30 years. Now, they started to test this vaccine starting last July. And when you test it, they did it in over 40-something thousand people who volunteered to be in the experiment to see if it's safe. And usually if a vaccine is going to cause a problem, you find out in the first 6 to 8 weeks. So when they gave this vaccine starting in July, by September, they started to have an idea if there were going to be bad side effects, and they did not see any bad side effects. Some people get a little soreness in their arm. It's just like any other shot. There's nothing different about it. This is a 2-step vaccine. So depending on which one you get, there are 2 out there. One is made by Pfizer, which is a big drug company. And if you get that one, you would get your second shot 3 weeks later. Or Moderna is another one. And if you get that shot, you would get your second one 28 days later. And after you get the first shot, your body starts to make those little memory cells to fight that virus if it sees it again. So after the first shot, you have about 50% protection. And when you get the second shot, you get about 95% protection. So that is a very good rate of protection. Right now, we have 0 protection. After 1 shot, 50, and 2 shots, 95. So that means it's effective and it's safe because it hasn't made anyone really sick. And as I said, the worst side effects usually happen in the first 6 to 8 weeks. It seems to work in all age groups. My specialty is taking care of people over the age of 65. And as we get older, our bodies are a little sluggish in making protection against infections. And so we know, for example, when we give the flu shot to people who are in their 70s or 80s, sometimes their body may not mount enough of protection after they get the flu shot. And sometimes we have to give them a stronger dose of the flu shot in order to give them enough protection. It looks like with this coronavirus vaccine, though, that it even helps older adults. And we're still looking and we're getting more information about it. So it works in all age groups over the age of 18. They did not test it initially in children, but now they are starting to do that. And here at Upstate at the Golisano Children's Hospital, they have started some research to give it to children to see how they handle it. What we anticipate is that they should be able to handle it just like older people. So it works. It's 95% effective after the second dose, and the side effects are minor. And so I've been asking my patients, well, do you think you're going to get it? And they say, oh, Dr. Brangman, I don't even like to get the flu shot because the last time I got the flu shot, I got sick. So I don't like shots, or I don't know what they put in that. I am not putting it in my body. And I've started to hear a lot of concerns. A lot of people were getting their information from Facebook and Twitter, and there was a lot of misinformation out there. I also have patients that take a lot of supplements. They go to the general nutrition store or they see something advertised on TV and they take it even though there's very little information about it. And so you might have heard of Prevagen, which they advertise to help your memory, which is a totally junk, bogus pill. It's very expensive. And people come to my office and say, oh, I got this Prevagen to help my memory. And I'm telling them there was very little research on it. Most of it is made under unknown conditions, so you never know what's actually in the capsule. And if it was good, I would have told you to take it by now. So on one hand, I see people taking things that are very questionable. We don't know if it even helps them, and it's super expensive. And then on the other hand, we have a vaccine for a deadly virus, and people are afraid to take it. So I wanted to just make sure that we get the information out so that you could make a good decision. Now, we don't know how long the protection is going to last with this vaccine. It could last 6 months or more. That's also part of our new research. Now that over 1 million people have gotten the vaccine, they're going to start monitoring people to see how long it lasts. It's possible you need to get a booster shot in a certain amount of time just to strengthen your body's response to it, but that's still under investigation. People ask me, well, why should I get it if I still have to wear a mask? And the reason is that it's 95% protective, but there are some people in that 5% who may still be open to getting the virus. But also, if people around us aren't getting the virus, that is aren't getting the vaccine, excuse me, that's a concern. In order to try to get back to a normal lifestyle, at least 70 or maybe even 80% of our country would have to take the vaccine, because what we want to do is not give that virus a place to land. And if a large number of people have the vaccine and have the protection, then that means that virus has nowhere to go. Right now, it has a lot of places to go, and that's why it's infecting so many people. But when we start to get a certain number of people who have had the vaccine, then the virus has nowhere to stop and set up shop, and it starts to disappear. That's why chickenpox is so hard to find nowadays. Very few people get that. That's why measles. Back in the day when I was younger, I had to get a vaccine against smallpox. Smallpox has essentially been wiped off the face of the earth. So has polio. Polio used to cripple a lot of people until they came up with a vaccine. And now just about everyone gets a polio shot. So now that virus, it's not that the virus has disappeared, it's just that it doesn't have any place to set up shop anymore because so many people are protected against it. And that's what really needs to happen with the coronavirus, is that enough people have to get the vaccine so it can't set up shop in our communities. Some of you may have remembered the early days of HIV. And when I was an intern back in the early 1980s, HIV was just starting and we were aware of it. And before HIV came out, we never wore gloves when we took care of patients. We just didn't think that it was important because there were very few diseases you could get. But now everybody wears gloves because we don't want to come in contact with blood or body fluid as a way of protecting ourselves against infection. And that's what happens with a mask. You wear a mask to protect yourself against infection. And we are going to probably have to wear masks for the time being until enough people get the vaccine. Unfortunately, this is a virus that's highly contagious, and people wear masks. You see them pulling them down under their chin, or their nose is sticking out, or maybe they have something on their hands and they touch their face, and eventually they end up infecting themselves or infecting someone in their family. I have some patients who are grandparents. I take care of a lot of grandparents, and they miss their grandkids, and over Christmas, their grandkids came in from out of town and they thought they were being careful. And a few days after Christmas, the grandparents started to get sick. I'm grateful that they have made it through, but it gets very tiring to be isolated from people you love and not to be able to give a hug. And these are all things that we have to maintain in order to keep that virus away. And so the vaccine is another way that will allow us eventually to start to have that close contact with people in our family again, because your body would be protected from it. I think those are the big concepts here. There are currently two vaccines available, one by Pfizer and one by Moderna. And there will be a couple of others coming out soon, one by Johnson & Johnson and one by AstraZeneca. And these are going to be one-shot vaccines, and they are made the old-fashioned way, where they take a little bit of the virus and they kill it, and then they incubate it inside an egg. If you've ever had a flu shot, you know they ask you if you've had an allergy to eggs, because what they do is they take the flu virus and they kill it so that it can't really infect you, and then they incubate it or grow it in an egg to create enough of the proteins associated with that virus, and then they turn that into a vaccine. And that will be a one-shot vaccine. We're waiting to hear how effective it will be. But right now, all the vaccines that are available require 2 shots, and they're 95% effective. Now, you've probably heard about all the confusion about getting the vaccine and when it's going to be available. And some of this, again, comes from leadership in the White House, because they said they had a whole stockpile of over 1 million vaccines that turned out to not be true. I don't know if you're surprised about someone lying from the White House, but he was lying. And so now there isn't that stockpile that we thought. The companies are making the vaccine, and eventually we will all have enough of it. So it will be available if you decide to take it. Right now, we're in a transition with a new administration coming into the White House, who I think will have a serious plan that we can trust, that will be based in truth, and it will be coordinated by people who know what they're doing, so that hopefully we will be over this distribution problem very soon. So this is a good time for you to learn more about the vaccine, get your questions answered, so that if you decide to get it, you can have that decision ready to go by the time the vaccine's available. So what I would like to do now is to see if you have any questions. I would really like to make sure that everyone who is listening gets a chance to ask their questions. No question is too silly or too big or too small. I want to be able to say at the end of this that everybody understands the basics about the vaccine and feels like they have the information they know to make a decision.
Dr. Bregman, before we go into questions from if Kathy has anyone, I want to be able to ask a question. It was a question I was going to ask, but then I also saw we're also on Facebook Live too. So thank you to those who are watching on Facebook Live too. One of the questions that came up was the question about the shot itself. There was a question that there was a congressman who actually tested positive for the virus even after receiving both of the vaccines. Give us a little bit about, that, because I know when somebody hears that, that's immediate skepticism, Now, mind you, it's only been one case that we've heard of like this, but what can you tell us about that? And what can you give towards the fears that some people have?
So 2 things. The vaccine is 95% effective. So there may be some people whose body doesn't get to that 95%. Maybe their body can respond at an 80% level. Or if their body responds at 95%, that means there's still a 5% chance you could get it. There's no vaccine that's 100%. The majority of people, though, will not get the virus after they get the vaccine. I don't know about this congressman, but the other thing I would suspect that even if he gets the virus, it won't make him as sick as if he didn't have the vaccine at all. The vaccine is 100% effective in making sure you don't get the real severe form of this virus. So even if you were to get sick, you might just get it in a very mild form and maybe survive it better than if you didn't have the vaccine at all.
Mhm. Then also, can you just walk us through again a little bit more about the side effects? Because some people are concerned about, hey, if I take this, I may have some of these side effects that actually come with the vaccine. Some don't even know what some of the side effects are. Can you give us a little bit more about the side effects and what those possibilities are?
So the side effects after the first shot, your arm may be sore. I actually got mine a couple of weeks ago and my arm was a little bit sore. Every time I moved my arm, I kind of felt it, but I didn't feel sick. I didn't have a fever. And after about a day, I was back to normal. I'm scheduled to get my second shot this week, and talking to friends who got their second shot, some of them feel a little sick. They may have a fever or they may feel a little achy like you do when you have the flu. The good thing is that means that your body is responding and your immune system, which is the system in our body that creates protection, is doing its thing. So when you feel that, you may feel a little miserable for a day, maybe 2 days, but it's nowhere near the way you would feel if you actually got coronavirus. If you got coronavirus, you would feel very sick for a long time. So yes, the second shot may make you feel a little achy. It may give you a fever. It doesn't last very long. It just means that your body is doing what it's supposed to and building up the protection against the virus.
Okay. And another question came out about those with heart conditions. Some are worried about taking the vaccine because you have a heart condition. Good idea, bad idea to take the vaccine with a heart condition?
You should take the vaccine with a heart condition because getting coronavirus with a heart condition can kill you. So there's nothing in the vaccine that should affect your heart, that should affect your diabetes, that should affect your cancer, that should affect your lung disease. However, the virus will affect those things. So there's no reason not to take it if you have a heart condition.
We'll go to Kathy now and see. I think maybe Kathy has a couple questions that came in.
Yeah, so thanks, Dr. Rangan. That was like fabulous. But I do have a bunch of questions. Great questions. Keep them coming. Some real brief ones. Does it matter which of the two vaccines you get?
No, it doesn't matter if you get the Pfizer or the Moderna. But if you get the first shot Pfizer, you should get the second shot Pfizer, and the same thing with Moderna. You can't mix or match. So
Okay.
you just get one of the same.
Okay.
They're both equally good.
And if somebody has food allergies or like an allergy to other kinds of drugs, like a penicillin allergy or something, does that mean that they need to worry more about this vaccine and allergic reactions?
So we've heard about allergic reactions, and it's usually for people who are so allergic, they've had a problem called anaphylaxis. And anaphylaxis is just the fancy word for a huge allergy that just overwhelms your body. And usually people who have that kind of allergy walks around with an EpiPen. And if you've never heard of an EpiPen, that means you never had a very bad allergy. But an EpiPen is like your own little portable support system that if you got this bad allergy, you could give yourself an injection with this EpiPen that would help save your life.
Mhm.
So we have heard some people who are super, super allergic who have had a reaction, but there's still a very small number. So right now, more than 1 million people have gotten the vaccine, and I think only about 5 or 6 people have had a severe reaction. So most reactions or allergies that people have to food or to certain medicines should not interfere with this vaccine.
So more about that reaction then. Is that why people have to wait around a little bit after they get a vaccine? And how long are you supposed to wait around?
So what they want to do is have you stay for about 15 minutes, because if you were going to have a very severe allergy, you would usually get it within 15 minutes of getting the shot. So what they do is have you sit there for 15 minutes just to keep an eye on you, and then you can leave.
Okay, great. Now, what about this new strain and the vaccine? So this UK strain that everybody's worried about. Do we know anything about if the vaccines will work?
So far the information is that they kind of planned for changes in the virus. Every time the virus spreads and multiplies among people, it changes a little bit. They took this into account, and the information that we have so far is that these 2 vaccines will still provide protection, even with this new super contagious strain.
Mhm. Now, I just want to get clear. This is a question about someone who had an anaphylactic reaction to Novocaine. So unrelated medicine, for those who don't know what Novocaine, that's like a anesthetic sort of thing. So does that mean that you can't get the vaccine or shouldn't get the vaccine?
Oh, probably not. Novocaine is numbing medicine. Maybe it was like for a dental or some other surgery. I would probably talk it over with your doctor, but the information that I've been getting is that it probably would not cause another reaction. But I would suggest you talk it over with your doctor just to be sure.
Great. Now, if you already had the virus, I already had COVID, should I still get a vaccine?
Yes.
Why?
So if you've already had COVID, we don't know if you had a mild case, so therefore your body might not have mounted a real strong response against it. If you had a really severe case, your body probably did. However, it's still a good idea to get the vaccine because they give you a measured dose of it so that they can predict how your body is going to respond so that you get adequate protection. So if you had a real mild case of COVID, you might not have 95% protection if you were to get exposed again. So the recommendation is, even if you've had COVID, you should get the vaccine again.
Okay, that's helpful.
I got
Now-
one. I have one here coming from Facebook saying that being a double breast mastectomy survivor, with regards to injections in the deltoid muscle, is it okay to get a vaccine in the arm?
Yes. So yes, I understand when you've had a mastectomy, you have to be very careful about getting pressure on your arms, like a blood pressure or getting an IV, etc. But an injection goes deep into the muscle. It doesn't go into the blood vessels, and that should still be okay.
Okay.
There was a question about, there's not just the UK strain, but there's this new strain found in South Africa, E484K, for those who follow these things. So it's like we're going to get lots of strains that pop up, partly because we're looking for them more now, but also as we find these things and there's worries about maybe the vaccine won't work in this strain or that strain and things will keep changing. What's your perspective on that, about jumping in now with a vaccine?
So I would definitely get the vaccine now because it's going to cover you for the predominant or the main strains that we see. Viruses change. Every time they start spreading, they change over time. And they may have to adjust the vaccine at some point. You know, when you get a flu shot every year, they have to figure out what type of flu virus is most likely going to be in our area. And then they adjust the flu vaccine to meet that need. At some point, they might have to do that for the coronavirus too. But right now, the current vaccine covers everything.
Okay.
So if there's a new virus coming in from South Africa, you should still be protected, because chances are that would still give you some protection. and you probably wouldn't get a severe illness as you would if you didn't have any vaccine at all in your system.
Okay. Now, we're always told to worry about drug interactions and not to take one drug if you're not another without checking with your pharmacist or your doctor. So there have been questions about somebody's on blood thinners or someone's on other sort of medications for chronic problems. Does that raise a concern with the vaccine?
No, there's no concern with the vaccine, and there's no concern in terms of getting the injection. There are no medications that have been found to interact with the vaccine, and people who are on blood thinners are known to bruise or bleed very easily when they get any kind of injury, but usually a shot is a very clean procedure.
Mhm.
The shot goes in and out very quickly, and most people don't have excessive bleeding from that. So there's no reason why you can't have the vaccine.
Okay. There was a question from Facebook about that the vaccines are not actually FDA approved. They have this emergency use authorization. So what's that about? What do you think about that? Why aren't they just approved?
So the emergency use authorization happens when there's an emergency. And when they look and see if the vaccine is better than nothing. And they do all this research and they have all these scientists look at the data and they say that there's such an emergent situation going on. This is an effective vaccine and it's safe. We don't want to wait for it to go through the whole FDA process and have more people potentially die. So we will let you use it under this emergency use authorization. Meanwhile, the process for getting it approved through the FDA continues. So there have been a lot of medications that have been used for emergency use when there's a real important emergency and treatment is needed to help protect people's health. It doesn't mean that it's so emergent that it's not safe, because they did have a panel of experts who said it was safe.
Okay, that's helpful. What
And
about
one person asked the question, if you have antibodies, do you need to rush to go ahead and get vaccinated?
So yes, so right now they have not been measuring how many antibodies you have. And this was another decision that came out of the White House to just tell people if they were positive without saying how much antibodies you have. So again, when you get this vaccine, you're getting a measured dose of vaccine that has been shown to cause your body to produce enough antibodies to give you 95% protection. Now, by the time you get a test to see where your antibodies are, it's just too long and involved, and it's easier to just get the vaccine.
And someone else asked a question about why is there a wait between the first and the second shot? So can you explain that?
So what they did is one is called a prime, where they get your body ready and pumped up. And then once your body is pumped up, they give you a booster to get a maximum response. And they figured out that it takes, with one vaccine, about 3 weeks to get your body primed and pumped up so that when you get that second shot, it gives you the appropriate response. So you might have heard a lot of times you can get a booster shot, like a tetanus shot you get every 10 years as a booster. Some people get a booster shot for the measles. That's because first you prime the body and kind of put it on alert, and then you give it a second dose to get the maximum response. Now, the other vaccines that are coming out by Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca is going to do it all in one shot.
The other question that comes up is, if I get the vaccine and someone in my house does not, am I protected from that person if they get COVID?
We think so. that's one of the reasons why we need so many people to get the vaccine, because you just don't want that virus hanging around. So again, say you have 95% protection, you still have a 5% chance. It's better than having 100% chance, but there's still a chance.
And
The
so
other-
after that first shot, what is my percentage looking like? Because you do hear people say, we've heard that people have contracted COVID right after getting the first shot, or a short time after getting the first shot. I know we talked a little bit about that before. So explain that, because I think somebody's, looking at it saying, well, why should I get the shot if after the first time I get the shot, people are coming back and still contracting COVID?
So the first shot gives you about 50% protection after 2 weeks. And what we think happens is people get that first shot and maybe they were already infected and we didn't know it, or they get the shot and they relax a little bit and maybe not wearing their mask as much, or maybe hanging out with people, and then they get infected before their body has a chance to mount a full protective response. The vaccine cannot give you COVID. It's impossible, because the vaccine does not contain the entire virus. So you cannot get COVID from the vaccine, but you do have to give your body a chance to build up protection. And during that time, while you're waiting for your body to build up protection, you should not let your guard down.
And another question comes in saying, will the vaccine stop false positives when tested in the future?
That's a good question, and I'm not sure the answer. So you may get a positive, well, it depends. So there are 2 types of tests. There's one test that looks for the actual virus, and then there's another test that looks for the protein that the virus leaves behind. The protein that the virus leaves behind may be positive, but the actual virus test should not be. So
Okay.
It gets a little complicated, but you should be protected.
Okay. What we can do is, if there are people who want to unmute themselves, if they have a question and you're here with us on Zoom, and I guess you do want to unmute and maybe you want to ask for yourself, you can feel free to do that at this moment, as Dr. Brengman and Kathy are here as well.
Just while people are getting ready to do that, just a couple of other questions that came in. Do you need to get a COVID test before you get vaccinated? Is there any reason to do that?
No. In fact, they'll ask you if you're waiting for results. If you do get a COVID test, you have to wait for it to be negative, because they don't want to give you the vaccine if you have COVID. So if you have a fever or a sore throat, or you think you might have COVID, or you've been near someone, you might want to wait until you make sure you don't have it.
And what's the story on vaccines for women who are pregnant?
So that's a very good question. And I know that there are a number of doctors and nurses who were pregnant who decided to get the vaccine. However, we don't have a lot of information, because when they were doing the research on the vaccine, they did not include anyone under 18 and anyone who was pregnant. So we do know that pregnant women are more vulnerable when they get COVID. So what I would do is recommend that you speak to your doctor about getting the vaccine. The thought is that some people, depending on their stage of pregnancy, may be okay getting the vaccine, but we don't have the data or the information, and it's a decision that you would have to make with your doctor.
Okay, great, thanks.
Also, one other question, and then we'll turn, I think. It says, has there been any evidence as to the reverse effects the vaccine has on people of color as opposed to other races?
I don't think that has been looked at, and I don't think that's an issue. So there's no genetic reason why we would have a different response to the vaccine. So most of our work in medicine from the old days was to try to make it seem like Black people had different genes and a different way of getting diseases. And that has not been shown to be true. So there's nothing about the way Black people's bodies are built that would make them get a reaction to the vaccine other than different than, say, people who are Chinese or white or whatever. So there's a lot of myths out there about the health of Black people and what causes it. And we're starting to understand that a lot of health problems are not because we are Black per se, but because of the effects of racism and lack of access to health care and living in environments that might have more pollution and not having access to healthy foods and other things like that, and not because there's a genetic reason for us to be different.
And also, I would say that in those initial 2 trials of the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, they had 70,000 people, 7,000 or 10% were Black, and they did look, and just to make sure that the vaccine was just as effective, and also looked for side effects. So in addition to, we wouldn't expect there would be a difference, they actually found that amongst those 7,000, there was no difference in either how effective it was or side effects. So we can be really quite sure on that.
Okay. If there's anybody on our Zoom that wants to, feel free to ask a question at this time. You can definitely unmute yourself if you do. If we've already answered your question, that's okay too. But feel free, if you want to in this moment, you can unmute yourself and ask Dr. Bregman for yourself.
I have a question. When you apply for the app, applying to get appointment, we're having problem getting appointment, and where is the nearest place that you can get the
Vaccine.
vaccine? Thank you, Pastor.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big problem right now because there is a lot of demand for the vaccine, but not enough vaccine to go around. So I just heard on the news that Onondaga County is only getting 900 doses this week, whereas last week they got 3,600 doses. So that means it's going to be very hard to get it. They're giving it out at the fairground. Kinney Drugs is doing it, and I think Wegmans is doing it. But as soon as they open up a slot, it's taken up instantly. So I think it's going to be hard to get until we get a bigger supply.
They are saying the closest place now is Binghamton.
Yeah, but you can't really go out of your county because they're trying to do it by county.
I wouldn't go away to Binghamton anyway just to get the shot.
No, I don't think that's going to be needed. I think, especially in the winter, you don't want to be on 81 in the snow.
No,
But-
I wouldn't either.
Yeah, so what I would say is just sit tight, continue to wear your mask, wash your hands, stay away from people, and I think the supplies will catch up. I'm very hopeful with a change of leadership in Washington, there's going to be a plan that's going to be more organized and things will start to turn around.
Yeah, so it's almost a wait and see approach, and I think we're all.
Yeah, it's just that it was so mismanaged at the top level from the feds. All the states are scrambling, and hopefully it's going to get organized.
Yeah. Others for Dr. Bregman, if you're on Zoom and you want to unmute yourself and ask your own question, feel free at this time.
Yes, I have a question. There was a report on the news about 23 people dying in Norway from getting the Pfizer vaccine.
Yeah.
I want to know, do you have any other information on that? Do we know, is that true? I mean, I heard it on News Nation.
So I read about it too, and it was nursing home people. And the thing about people in nursing homes is that they're usually pretty frail and pretty sick. And there are some things that will happen anyway, and the vaccine looks like it could be a coincidence rather than a cause. But whenever something happens with a cluster of people, everyone looks at it. But when we're talking about people who are in a nursing home, and I've taken care of people in nursing homes, they're usually very fragile, and just about anything you do could push them over their limit. So I don't think that from that information, I would recommend that you not get the vaccine.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, doctor. I have a question for you. Hello, Pastor.
Hey, how you doing, Dolly?
Okay, I have a question for you. I know you don't have an exact time frame, but do you think like by the spring or the summer, it should maybe be enough vaccine for like people my age or maybe younger to get it? Because I know we're elderly and nursing home and frontline workers are first priority. Do you think at least around the summer? I'd like to travel. I'm about to go crazy. And I really would like to go to my family reunion. or
Yes, I
something.
know. Everybody's, I don't know what your age is,
Thank you.
but
I'm 56.
okay. So you might be in that next phase, but like I said, I think by the summer, everyone should be covered. I'm hoping a little bit sooner, but that has to do with the organization that happens on a national level.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm hopeful. I read one article that said by the end of the year, hopefully enough people will be vaccinated that our world would start to look a little bit better. We're not going to be back to where we were. It's going to be a new normal.
Excuse me,
Thank you
I
so
don't have a
much.
question. I don't have a question, but I'd like to share some information. I just heard on the news before you came on from Governor Cuomo that he had ordered a supply from Pfizer himself. He said, I talked to the CEO and the president of Pfizer for New York State, so we should be getting some soon, prayerfully.
Okay, so there you go. I think we're going to be okay. I try to tell people don't get too crazy about it, because when everybody wants something and they think there's not enough to go around, people tend to get a little crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I think we should just take a deep breath. There's going to be a change in Washington. I saw all these smart people that are already working on a plan. And I think everybody who wants a vaccine is going to get it. In the meantime, just continue to be very safe and be very careful. And everything should be on track by the spring, late spring, early summer.
Reverend Jaime,
Yes.
I have a question, doctor. I have a 93-year-old mother who is on dialysis, and my dad is 94 and extremely healthy, except for a little controlled blood pressure. Should they be vaccinated?
Yes, absolutely. So people on dialysis, their bodies are already weakened and they should get it. And your father who's 94 should definitely get it. So people who are in their 90s who get coronavirus do not do well. So we don't want them to be in that category where they get the virus. And when you go out for dialysis, you have to come in contact with people. So you definitely should, they should be in that first high risk group. So
Thank you.
yes, they should get it, and you should probably get it too because you see them.
Amen. Thank you, Myra. Myra coming to us all the way from Buffalo. Big shout out to all those who are watching from Buffalo. And I saw Binghamton on there. I saw Elmira, see Syracuse and surrounding areas. Thank you for joining us and being with us. I have another question. One person says, I have upper respiratory issues like bronchitis, and my 14-year-old daughter has asthma. I really don't trust what will happen after we take it. You say what, doctor?
So I think that you should be very concerned about getting the virus if you have respiratory problems or asthma. People who get the virus with these lung conditions don't do well. And even if you don't die from it, it could give you permanent lung damage. So this is where you have to try to separate the emotion and the fear from the knowledge. And that can be hard. And because the vaccine isn't immediately available, you have a little time to think it over. But this would be a very high risk, both for you and your daughter. Your daughter is 14 right now. It's not recommended under 18, but we should have new information about it. But if you have respiratory trouble, that means if you got the virus, you would have a very high chance of not having a good outcome. So you have to decide if your worry about getting the vaccine is bigger than having a bad outcome if you got the virus. In the meantime, you should be super, super careful, wearing a mask. Don't keep touching the mask when you get outside. Don't pull it up and down in front of your face. Don't wear it under your nose. Wash your hands. If you don't have soap and water, use hand sanitizer. I would probably get my groceries delivered. I would not go shopping. And I would be super careful, especially when this highly contagious strain is now out and about. That would be my recommendation.
And someone else asked, when is the Johnson & Johnson vaccine going to be available?
I don't know. I understand that they will be going up for emergency use authorization shortly. You'll probably hear it on the news.
Okay. Kathy?
You're muted.
Sorry. Wanted to let people know that I put in the chat bar some resources, and I'll just say for more information or your own eligibility, if you are in New York State, and particularly if you don't have internet access, you can dial 211. That's a New York State hotline. As you
And
know,
the line
we're
is always busy. I will tell you that. My patients told me that it's busy, busy, busy. So,
so I
it's
think
very frustrating.
it's like trying to get toilet paper last March. Okay, it'll get better. But so that's one option. The second option is Upstate is the hub for vaccine in a 5-county area. So we cover Onondaga, Oswego, Oneida, Monroe, Madison. I think that's right. And they have a 24/7 hotline. And I can tell you, we do pick that up because I volunteer on that hotline. So we pick it up. That's the major difference. We have up-to-date information as to where to go, where most likely there may be vaccine availability, when is good to check back online. So that's a resource for you. That number's in the chat line, but just it's 315-464-3979. So if you push 1, you can ask any questions about COVID. You push 2, you can ask about the vaccines. So that's a resource to you. And then Onondaga County, if you live in our county, they have scheduling possibilities some days online as well. And you go to ongov.net/health. All of that's in your chat. Or you can call the Upstate hotline and they can help link you. Now, as Dr. Brangman said, none of these services are perfect. And you do have to keep checking back. or you can just kind of chill, do all those things to keep yourself safe, and it will get better over time.
And once again, for all of us, you know, our hope in being here tonight is really to offer information. It's not to convince you. It's hopefully to give you the information that you can make an informed decision, because there are a lot of myths, there are a lot of stereotypes, there are a lot of things that are going out there in the media, but it's important, as my mother used to say, to get it from the horse's mouth, right? And so you want to make sure that you're getting it directly from sources, and sources that are close to home, particularly for us here in Syracuse. And we trust Dr. Brangman, and we trust, of course, Dr. Kathy to be able to give us insight, to let us know what's happening, particularly with boots on the ground right in upstate with this virus, and also with the vaccination. But we want to encourage everybody to take advantage of the information. Want to encourage people to also utilize all of the resources that are out there, so that way you can continue. It's one thing to hear something on TV. It's another thing to hear something coming from, you know, a media outlet and a media source. And as one who also works as a pastor, but also in media, we understand that sometimes media makes mistakes, and we also understand that information continues to change so, you know, frequently. And sometimes that information isn't updated. Sometimes that information can be sometimes outdated, but it's important that you get the information. And so tonight we wanted to make sure that you got the necessary information so that you can be better informed and make your own decision. But certainly with what's out there, I know a lot of people have been infected, particularly even in our congregation, and if not infected, affected. And if we can do anything to mitigate the risk of people being infected as well as affected, that we want to be able to do. And so that's why we had this forum. And it wasn't just for the members of Peoples. As you can see, we've got people from all across central New York, western New York, some people as far away as downstate, who are watching to be informed because they trust what's being said and being delivered here. So if anybody has any other questions on our Zoom, please unmute yourself and ask. We want to make sure that before we get off tonight, that all questions have the ability to be answered. All right. That takes care of the Zoom portion, I guess. And on the Facebook side, I think we've gotten all the questions, right, Sister Kathy?
Yep, I think so.
I think we got them as well. Once again, to let you know, we'll put the Zoom up on our People's Church YouTube channel, so that way you can hear it again, and you can be able to hear Dr. Bragman's full explanation. Maybe it's something you heard and you just want to replay it. And so you can look for this on our YouTube channel, and then you can also look for it again on our Facebook channel, so that way you can get the necessary information and be informed. Dr. Brangman, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us tonight and taking the time out on Martin Luther King night to be able to be with us for a time like this. And also for me as pastor, just a moment of privilege just to say thank you to all of you who supported this afternoon. We preached at the Tucker Missionary Baptist Church, and all of you who called and text and sent messages on behalf of the message this afternoon. Thank you so much for supporting. We continue tomorrow. We're back resuming Bible study at 7 p.m. right here on this very same Zoom. If you want to join us, no matter where you are, you can join us on the Zoom. It is free. It's open to the public, and we can be able to share in the Bible study tomorrow. Dr. Kathy, thank you so much. Dr. Kathy is also, we have to go between Dr. Kathy and Sister Kathy because she's a member of our church. And there's no titles, but, in a time such as this, it's important to know who we've got in our congregation and who we've got representing us. And thank you both for the work that you're doing. And thank you for helping us here tonight. All right, everybody. So that wraps it up. Be safe. We're prayerful one for the other. We will talk to you soon, and God bless. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.